The sharp clatter of metal against tile shattered the pre-dawn silence of Callum Rhodes's kitchen. A whisk rolled across the floor, leaving a trail of pancake batter in its wake. He cursed under his breath, reaching for a cloth while keeping one eye on the clock above the industrial stove. 5:47 a.m. 13 minutes before Juniper's usual wake-up time. Not today, he muttered, wiping up the mess with practiced efficiency. The morning light hadn't yet touched the windows of his restaurant's kitchen, but Callum moved through the space with the familiarity of a man who'd spent countless hours here. This was his sanctuary, his stage, and lately, his escape. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway made him freeze. A moment later, a sleepy-eyed 5-year-old appeared in the doorway, clutching a well-loved stuffed animal. "Daddy, are you making special breakfast?" Juniper's voice was still thick with sleep, her blonde hair a tangled mess around her face. She held Maple, her constant companion, close to her chest. Callum's expression softened instantly. "Hey, sunshine, you're up early." He abandoned the mess and crossed the kitchen, scooping her up in his arms. "And yes, I am. But it was supposed to be a surprise. I heard the noise," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Can I help?" He hesitated for a moment, remembering the last time he'd let her help with breakfast. It had taken hours to clean up the flour explosion. But those big blue eyes, mirror images of his own, were impossible to resist. "Okay, but we have rules, remember?" Juniper nodded solemnly. "No touching hot things, no running, and listen to Daddy. That's my girl." He set her down on the special step stool he'd had custom made for the kitchen, the one with her name carved into the side. "Want to tell me about your dreams while we cook?" As Juniper launched into an elaborate tale about flying unicorns and rainbow clouds, Callum's hands moved automatically through the familiar motions of their Sunday ritual. Crack eggs, measure flour, whisk buttermilk. The routine was as natural as breathing, but today something felt off. Maybe it was the early hour, or the stack of resumes waiting in his office. All candidates for the position of Juniper's new babysitter, none of them quite right. "And then, Daddy, the unicorn said we needed more sprinkles." Juniper's voice pulled him back to the present. "Did it now?" He smiled, pouring batter onto the griddle in perfect circles. "Sounds like this unicorn knows what it's talking about." Maple thinks so too. Juniper hugged her stuffed friend closer. "Daddy? Ashley's mommy comes to her class for special reading time." There was a pause heavy with unspoken wishes. "Do you think maybe—" Callum's hands stilled over the griddle. These moments were the hardest, when his daughter's innocent questions stripped away all his carefully constructed defenses. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother had looked at her, perfect and new, and decided that motherhood wasn't her calling? "Hey," he said softly, turning to face her. "How about we make these pancakes extra special? I've got some chocolate chips hidden away." The deflection worked as it usually did. Juniper's face lit up, momentarily forgetting her question, but Callum saw her slip a hand into the pocket of her pajamas, where he knew she kept one of her family drawings, the ones she thought he didn't know about. As they worked together, the kitchen filled with the warm scent of butter and vanilla. Through the windows, dawn was finally breaking over Asheville, painting the North Carolina sky in shades of pink and gold. The restaurant wouldn't open for hours, but already Callum could feel the weight of the day ahead pressing down on him. His phone buzzed on the counter, probably another message from his restaurant manager about the evening's reservations. He glanced at it briefly, then did a double take. The babysitting agency had sent through another candidate's information, marked urgent. "Juniper, honey, watch these bubbles for me. When they get big like quarters, that means it's time to flip," she finished proudly. "I remember, Daddy." He smiled, though his mind was already racing through contingency plans. The latest babysitter had quit with barely a day's notice, citing personal reasons, though Callum suspected it had more to do with his long hours and unconventional schedule. He needed someone reliable, someone who would understand that his daughter came first, always. Opening the message, his fingers moved quickly across the screen, typing out a response. He needed to get this sorted before the weekend was over. The restaurant was entering its busiest season, and he couldn't keep bringing Juniper to work with him no matter how much she loved helping in the kitchen. "Daddy! The bubbles!" He turned back just in time to see Juniper reaching for the spatula. "Whoa there, chef, remember the rules?" He caught her hand gently. "Hot things are Daddy's job." As he flipped the perfectly golden pancakes, Callum felt a familiar ache in his chest. He was doing his best, juggling the roles of father, mother, chef, and business owner. But moments like these, quiet Sunday mornings with his daughter, reminded him that something was missing from their little family. Not the woman who'd left them, but maybe someone who would choose to stay. "Theo," phone buzzed again. Without looking, he sent off a quick reply to what he assumed was the agency's follow-up. Later, he would realize that this moment, this simple act of sending a message without checking the number, would change everything. But for now, he was focused on his daughter's delighted gasp as he slid a stack of chocolate chip pancakes onto her favorite plate, complete with a whipped cream smile and berry eyes. "Perfect," Juniper declared, carefully arranging Maple in the chair beside her. Callum watched her dig in, her legs swinging happily beneath the table. "Yeah," he said, softly, even as something inside him whispered that perfect wasn't quite the right word. Almost perfect. Outside, the morning sun finally broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. In a few hours, this space would come alive with the controlled chaos of a successful restaurant. But for now, it was just a father and daughter, sharing breakfast and unspoken dreams of a family that might someday feel complete. Elowen Grace Price traced her finger around the rim of her coffee mug, watching the early morning fog roll through downtown Asheville. From her temporary apartment's window, she could see the mountains in the distance, their familiar silhouettes both comforting and haunting. 8 years away hadn't changed their outline, but everything else felt different. The cardboard boxes, scattered around her living room, seemed to mock her attempt at unpacking. 1 week back in her hometown, and she'd barely managed to find her coffee maker. Her camera equipment remained carefully packed away. She couldn't bring herself to set up her home studio yet. Not when her brother's empty house still held all his photography gear, gathering dust. Her phone buzzed, disrupting the quiet. Another message from the real estate agent about clearing out Richard's house. Elowen's throat tightened. How was she supposed to sort through a lifetime of memories when she could barely handle walking past his favorite coffee shop? "I'm trying, Rich," she whispered to the empty room, her fingers automatically finding the Believe tattoo on her wrist. "I'm really trying." The morning sun caught the silver chain around her neck, her mother's necklace, now her most precious possession. She'd worn it every day since leaving Asheville, a reminder of what she'd left behind and why. The weight of it felt heavier now, laden with 8 years of choices and consequences. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Need experienced childcare. Provider ASAP. Reference number A789. Available to start immediately. Restaurant schedule, evenings mainly. Single parent situation. Elowen stared at the message, confusion creasing her brow. Wrong number, obviously. She started to type, "Sorry, wrong number," when another message came through. Previous experience with culinary environment preferred. 5-year-old girl. Sweet disposition. Competitive pay. Something about the messages tugged at her heart. Maybe it was the mention of the little girl, or maybe it was just that helping someone else might distract her from her own grief. Before she could overthink it, her fingers moved across the screen. "I think you have the wrong number, but I hope you find the right person. Sounds like a special little girl." The response came almost immediately. "Apologies for the confusion. The agency must have provided an incorrect contact. She should have left it at that. Should have put the phone down and gone back to avoiding the boxes that needed unpacking." Instead, she found herself typing again. "No worries. I actually just moved back to Asheville. Know any good coffee shops that aren't too crowded in the morning?" Why was she continuing this conversation with a stranger, Maybe because it was easier than dealing with the realtor's messages or the sympathy cards that kept arriving at her door. Maybe because for the first time in weeks, she felt a flutter of something that wasn't grief. The Hidden Bean on Oak Street. Best scones in town, quiet before 8. Elowen's mug slipped from her fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. The Hidden Bean. Their place. Her heart started racing as memories flooded back. Lazy Sunday mornings, stolen kisses over cappuccinos, promises that hadn't survived reality. Her hands shook as she picked up the fallen mug. It couldn't be. Asheville was a city of almost 100,000 people. The odds of accidentally texting with another message appeared. And the maple lattes are still your favorite, aren't they, Elle? The nickname hit her like a physical blow. Only one person had ever called her that. Only one person knew about her maple latte obsession. Only one person could make her heart race and stop with 4 simple words: Callum Rhodes. She sank onto her couch, phone clutched to her chest. How many times had she imagined running into him again? How many times had she rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd explain? But not like this. Not when she was still raw from Richard's death. Not when she couldn't even unpack her own life. Callum? She typed his name and deleted it 3 times before finally sending it. 8 years and that's all I get? Just my name? The hint of anger in his message was justified. She'd left him without a proper goodbye, without an explanation, just a note and a lifetime of regret. Her fingers moved to her tattoo again, tracing the letters that had become her mantra during the darkest days of Richard's illness. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I am. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. She could almost see him, probably in his restaurant kitchen, trying to contain the storm of emotions she knew he was capable of. Callum had always been intense, passionate. It was one of the things she'd loved most about him. Finally, the job offer was real. My daughter needs a babysitter. Daughter. The word echoed in her mind. Of course he'd moved on, built a life. She'd expected that, wanted it for him even, but knowing it and seeing the evidence were 2 different things. I'm not qualified, she wrote back. I've never been a babysitter. But you're qualified to judge coffee shops? A surprised laugh escaped her. Even now, even through text, he could make her smile. It was dangerous, this familiar pattern they were falling into. Callum, I just came back to handle some family matters. I'm not staying. The lie felt bitter on her tongue. She hadn't decided if she was staying. Everything was still too raw, too uncertain. Richard's house. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry, Elle. Tears pricked at her eyes. Of course he knew. In a town like Asheville, news traveled fast, especially when it involved someone like Richard, whose photography studio had been a local landmark. Her phone buzzed again. Come to the restaurant. Tonight after closing. We should talk. She should say no. Should focus on sorting through Richard's belongings, on rebuilding her own life. Should avoid reopening old wounds that had never really healed. Please, he added, I'll make maple creme brulee. A watery laugh escaped her. He fought dirty, remembering her favorites after all these years. Her fingers traced the believe on her wrist one more time before she typed her response. What time? 11 p.m. Use the back door. You remember where it is. Remember? As if she could forget anything about that restaurant. She'd been there the day he signed the lease, had helped him paint the walls, had kissed him in every corner of that kitchen before it became the successful establishment it was today. I remember everything, she typed, then quickly deleted it. Instead, she sent, I'll be there. Setting her phone down, Elowen looked around at her half-unpacked life. Through her window, she could see the mountains turning golden in the morning light. The same mountains that had witnessed their love story the first time around. The same mountains that had watched her drive away 8 years ago, crying so hard she'd had to pull over 3 times before reaching the highway. She stood and walked to one of the boxes marked Richard's Studio. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, was her brother's favorite camera. He'd always told her that sometimes the best shots came from unexpected angles, that beauty could be found in the mess of real life. "What do you think, Rich?" she whispered, running her fingers over the lens. "Is this a second chance or a second mistake?" The morning light caught her mother's necklace again, sending prisms dancing across the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed 9 times. In 2 hours, she had to meet with the realtor. In 14 hours, she had to face Callum. And somewhere in between, she had to figure out how to explain that she'd left him not because she didn't love him enough, but because she'd loved her brother more. The back alley behind Callum's restaurant hadn't changed. Same cracked concrete, same weathered brick walls, same yellow security light casting shadows across the delivery entrance. Elowen checked her phone. 10:57 p.m. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the door, each step echoing with memories. Inside, she could hear the muffled sounds of a kitchen winding down. The clatter of pots, the hum of industrial dishwashers, voices calling out final cleanup tasks. Some things never changed. She'd spent countless nights here during the restaurant's early days, watching Callum build his dream from the ground up. Before she could knock, the door swung open, and there he was. Callum filled the doorway, taller than she remembered, broader in the shoulders. His blonde brown hair was still perpetually messy, but there were subtle silver strands at his temples now. The same intense blue eyes studied her, but they held something new, a guardedness that made her chest ache. "You're early," he said, his voice deeper, rougher than in her memories. "You're supposed to say hello first." The words slipped out before she could stop them, an echo of their old banter. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Hello, Elowen. You're early." She managed a shaky smile. Some habits die hard. He stepped back, holding the door open. The gesture was polite, professional, nothing like the way he used to grab her hand and pull her inside for stolen kisses between prep work. The distance between them now felt wider than the 8 years that had passed. The kitchen was spotless, gleaming under the industrial lights. Most of the staff had gone home. Only the quiet hum of the refrigerators broke the silence. Elowen's fingers instinctively went to her wrist, tracing her tattoo through her cardigan sleeve. "Still doing that when you're nervous?" Callum asked, moving past her to the main cooking station. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the lingering aromas of the kitchen: garlic, herbs, wood smoke. "Still cracking your knuckles when you're angry?" she countered, noting his restless hands. He stilled, caught in the act. "I'm not angry." "Callum." "Fine. I'm furious." He turned to face her, bracing his hands on the steel counter. 8 years, Elle. 8 years of nothing. No calls, no messages, just a note that said, "I'm sorry, I have to go." And now you're back, accidentally texting me about coffee shops like we're old friends catching up. The hurt in his voice made her flinch. "I know I owe you an explanation." "You think?" He pushed away from the counter, running a hand through his hair. "Do you know what it was like? Planning to propose one day and finding you gone the next?" The word propose hit her like a physical blow. "You were going to..." "Yeah." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it on the counter between them. "Still have it. Pathetic, right? Keeping a ring for 8 years, never quite able to get rid of it." Elowen stared at the box, her vision blurring. "Callum, I don't." He held up a hand. "Just tell me why. I deserve that much." She sank onto one of the kitchen stools, suddenly exhausted. Richard was sick. Really sick. He needed experimental treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. Understanding dawned in Callum's eyes. "The job offer in Seattle. Double the salary I was making here, enough to cover Rich's medical bills." She twisted her mother's necklace between her fingers. They needed an immediate answer. I had 12 hours to decide. "You could have told me. We could have figured something out together. You were about to open the restaurant. Everything you had was tied up in this place." She gestured around the kitchen. "I couldn't ask you to risk that. Not for my problems." They wouldn't have been just your problems if you'd stayed. If you'd let me. He cut himself off, taking a deep breath. Did it work? The treatment? For a while. Her voice cracked. We got 5 more years with him. He got to see his studio become successful, got to teach dozens of students, but in the end, I heard. Callum's voice softened. Last month, right? She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. To her surprise, Callum moved closer, sliding a glass of water across the counter to her. The simple gesture of care, so familiar, so him, made her tears finally spill over. I wanted to call you, she whispered, so many times. But the longer I stayed away, the harder it got to come back. He finished her sentence, just like he used to do. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with 8 years of unspoken words. Finally, Callum spoke again, his voice carefully neutral. So, are you staying in Asheville? I don't know. Richard's house needs to be sold, his studio packed up. She wiped her eyes. After that, you could run away again? The edge was back in his voice. That's not fair. No? He leaned across the counter. Then tell me this, if Richard hadn't gotten sick, would you have stayed? Would we have? A crash from the dining room interrupted him. Both turned to see a small figure in purple pajamas frozen in the doorway, a fallen chair at her feet. Juniper? Callum's voice changed completely, softening with concern. Baby, what are you doing here? Carmen had an emergency, the little girl said, clutching a stuffed animal to her chest. Her sister came to get me, but you weren't in the office, and I heard voices. Elowen couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The child was beautiful. Delicate features, blonde hair, and Callum's striking blue eyes. Of course he'd moved on, had a family. The revelation shouldn't hurt this much, but it did. I'm sorry, she managed, standing quickly. I should go. Ella, wait. Callum moved around the counter, but Juniper reached her first. Are you Ella? The little girl's eyes were wide with curiosity. Like in the pictures? Elowen froze. Pictures? Daddy has a box of old pictures in his office. You're in lots of them. Juniper tilted her head. Your hair was different then. Juniper. Callum's voice held a warning note. It's okay, Elowen said softly, kneeling to the child's level. Yes, I'm Elle, and you must be Juniper. That's a beautiful name. It means new beginning in flower language. Juniper smiled proudly. Daddy picked it. Something in Elowen's chest tightened, of course he had. Callum, who had taught her the meaning of every herb in his garden, would choose a name with such significance. Jun, honey. Callum stepped closer. It's way past your bedtime. Let's get you home. But I'm not tired. The protest was undermined by a huge yawn. And I want to talk to Elmore. Elowen stood, her emotions a tangled mess. I really should go. No, both Callum and Juniper said at the same time. Please stay, Juniper added, reaching for her hand. Daddy made crème brûlée. He only makes that for special occasions. The simple touch of the child's hand broke something inside Elowen. She looked at Callum, saw the same conflict in his eyes that she felt in her heart. One dessert, he said quietly. We still have things to discuss. Looking at them, this man she'd never stopped loving and this unexpected child who already seemed to be claiming a piece of her heart, Elowen knew she was in danger of falling all over again. One dessert, she agreed. Juniper beamed, tugging her toward the dining room. Can I show her my drawings, Daddy? The ones of our family? Callum's sharp intake of breath matched Elowen's own. Family. Such a simple word, but loaded with so much meaning. Sure, sunshine, he said, his eyes never leaving Elowen's face. Show her everything. As they followed Juniper into the dining room, Elowen caught a glimpse of their reflection in the darkened windows. The three of them, walking together, looking for all the world like the family Juniper wanted to show. Her in those drawings. The danger wasn't in falling again, she realized. The danger was in wanting to stay fallen. Sunlight streamed through the restaurant's windows as Elowen watched Juniper carefully arrange sugar packets by color. It had been 3 days since their midnight encounter, and somehow she'd ended up agreeing to watch Juniper during the afternoon prep hours. Not officially as her babysitter. Callum hadn't actually asked, and she hadn't officially offered. They were existing in some undefined space between past and possibility. Blue goes with blue, yellow with yellow, Juniper explained seriously, her small fingers sorting with fierce concentration. It makes the customers happy when things match. Does it now? Elowen smiled, fascinated by the child's determination. And what about people who like when colors are mixed up? Juniper considered this, her nose scrunching in thought. Maybe they can have their own special sugar holder, with all the colors together like a rainbow. From the kitchen there was a crash followed by muffled cursing. Elowen glanced up to see Callum emerging, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Everything okay?" she asked, trying to ignore how domestic this all felt. "Supplier mixed. Up our orders. We're short on everything for tonight's special." He checked his watch. "I need to make some calls, but Jun's math tutor is supposed to be here in 20 minutes. I can help with math." The words tumbled out before Elowen could stop them. "I mean, if that's okay, I used to tutor in college." Callum's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw a flash of their shared past. Study sessions that turned into makeout sessions. Her helping him calculate food costs for his future restaurant while he fed her experimental dishes. "Please, Daddy?" Juniper bounced in her seat. "Elle knows about colors and rainbows. She probably knows about numbers too." A ghost of a smile touched Callum's lips. "You sure about this?" he asked Elowen quietly. "I'm sure." She held his gaze, letting him see her sincerity. "Handle your crisis. We've got this, right, Jun?" "Right." Juniper was already pulling worksheets from her backpack. "We're learning about adding big numbers like when you do the money counting, Daddy." "Okay." Callum seemed to be fighting some internal battle. "I'll be in my office if you need me." "Jun, remember what we said about being polite and not asking too many questions," Juniper finished. "I remember." But as soon as Callum disappeared into his office, Juniper turned to Elowen with eager eyes. "Can I ask you just one question?" "Please." "How about we do some math first?" Elowen counter-offered, recognizing the look of a child bursting with curiosity. "Then maybe we can trade questions. 1 for 1. Like a game?" "Exactly like a game. For every math problem you solve, you get to ask me one question and I get to ask you one too. Deal?" Juniper's face lit up. "Deal." She bent over her worksheet with newfound enthusiasm, her tongue poking out in concentration. As they worked through addition problems, Elowen couldn't help but notice the little things. How Juniper counted on her fingers just like Callum used to do. How she celebrated each correct answer with a tiny wiggle dance. How her eyes kept drifting to the office door as if checking that her father was still nearby. 75 plus 48 equals 123, Juniper announced triumphantly. "That's right, isn't it?" "Perfect. You're amazing at this." "My turn for a question." Juniper leaned forward conspiratorially. "Did you really? Used to cook with Daddy in the kitchen?" Elowen's heart squeezed. "I did. Though mostly I just tasted things and told him if they were good." "Were they always good?" "That's 2 questions," Elowen teased. "But yes, they were always good." Dad is a magical chef. Your turn to ask me something." Elowen pretended to think hard. What's your favorite thing your dad cooks?" "Sunday pancakes," Juniper answered without hesitation. "With chocolate chips and whipped cream faces, but..." She hesitated, suddenly serious. "Sometimes I wish..." "What do you wish, sweetheart?" "I wish someone else was there for pancakes too. Like how my friend Ashley has Sunday breakfast with her mom and dad." Juniper's voice got very small. "Do you like pancakes, Elle?" The innocent question carried the weight of so much more. Elowen felt tears pricking at her eyes. "I love pancakes, especially with maple syrup." "That's Daddy's favorite too," Juniper's face brightened. Maybe someday. How's the math going? Callum's voice made them both jump. He stood in the doorway, phone in hand, watching them with an unreadable expression. Elle is the best teacher ever. Juniper held up her completed worksheet. And we're playing a question game. Something flickered in Callum's eyes. Jun, why don't you go wash up for lunch? The lunch rush will be starting soon. Once Juniper had skipped off to the bathroom, Callum turned to Elowen. You don't have to do this. Do what? Get her hopes up. Be her friend. She gets attached easily, and when you leave again... When? Elowen stood, anger flaring. Not if? You've already decided I'm leaving, aren't you? He stepped closer, his voice low and intense. Isn't that what you do, Elle? Leave when things get complicated? That's not fair and you know it. No? His blue eyes blazed. Then tell me you're staying. Tell me you won't break her heart. Like... He cut himself off abruptly. Like I broke yours? She finished softly. The tension between them crackled with 8 years of hurt and unspoken words. They were standing too close now, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his eyebrow, could smell the familiar mix of spices and cologne that was uniquely him. I'm back. Juniper's voice broke the moment. Can Elle stay for lunch? Daddy, please? Callum stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place. Ella probably has other plans, sunshine. Actually, Elowen found herself saying, I'm free, if that's okay. Their eyes met over Juniper's head. Challenge, uncertainty, and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope, passed between them. Please, Daddy? Juniper's plea was accompanied by a hopeful smile that was pure Callum. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. But you need to finish your homework first. As Juniper happily returned to her math, Elowen caught Callum, watching them with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite read. Protection, fear, longing, and underneath it all a question he wouldn't ask. Was she staying this time? The truth was she didn't know. But watching Juniper beam over her calculations, feeling Callum's presence like a magnetic pull she couldn't resist, she was beginning to understand that maybe some questions didn't need immediate answers. Maybe sometimes the answer was in the staying itself, in choosing to be present for pancake Sundays and math homework and all the small moments in between. Elle, Juniper's voice pulled her from her thoughts. What's 8 plus 7? Why don't you show me how you'd solve it? She sat back down, aware of Callum still watching them. As Juniper worked through the problem, Elowen felt something shift in the air, like the universe was rearranging itself around this moment, around these three people trying to find their way to each other through a maze of past hurts and future hopes. In the kitchen, the lunch prep clatter began to build. Soon the restaurant would fill with customers. Life would move forward, as it always did. But for now, in this quiet moment of math problems and unspoken questions, Elowen allowed herself to imagine a future where she didn't run away. A future where maybe, just maybe, she could be part of someone's Sunday pancakes. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, while Elowen was helping Juniper water the small herb garden behind the restaurant. 2 weeks had passed since she'd started unofficially watching Juniper, and they'd fallen into a comfortable routine. But as her phone buzzed with the notification, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Dear Ms. Price, following your impressive portfolio review, we'd like to offer you the position of lead digital marketing manager at our Seattle headquarters. This role includes overseeing our West Coast visual content strategy and managing a team of 5. The compensation package includes... Are we giving the basil too much water? Elowen quickly locked her phone screen, forcing a smile. No, sweetie, that's perfect. Basil loves water just like your dad always says. Daddy says herbs are like people, Juniper declared, carefully moving her watering can to the next plant. They all need different things to be happy. From inside the kitchen, they could hear Callum's voice rising above the usual prep noise, giving instructions for a private event that evening. He'd been more relaxed lately, almost letting his guard down around Elowen, almost trusting her again. The thought made the job offer feel even heavier in her pocket. Elle? Juniper's small hand tugged at her cardigan. Can you help me reach the oregano? It looks thirsty. Of course. Elowen lifted her up, breathing in the sweet child shampoo scent of her hair. When had this little girl become so important to her? When had these moments started feeling like home? The back door opened, and Callum emerged, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. How are my favorite gardeners doing? Daddy! Juniper squirmed until Elowen set her down. We gave everyone drinks just like you taught me. Is that right? His eyes met Elowen's over their daughter's head, soft with something that made her heart ache. And did Elle learn all about herb care too? She already knows lots. She told about how you used to grow herbs in little pots in your window. A shadow crossed Callum's face. That was a long time ago. But she remembered. Juniper beamed. Ella remembers everything about you, Daddy. Just like you remember her favorite desserts and— Jun, Callum cut in gently. Why don't you go wash up? We need to get you ready for your afternoon play date with Ashley. Once Juniper had skipped inside, Callum turned to Elowen. You okay? You look— I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. Just tired. He stepped closer, studying her face. Try again. I still know when you're hiding something. Cal— The old nickname slipped out before she could stop it. Don't. Don't what? Care? He ran a hand through his hair in frustration, because that's not really an option anymore, not with Jun involved. The unspoken accusation hung between them. Not when you might leave again. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, probably the recruiter following up. The salary they were offering would be enough to keep Richard's studio running as a photography school, just like he'd always dreamed. A way to honor his memory, to make his death mean something. But standing here, surrounded by the herbs they'd planted together years ago, watching Callum try to protect his heart while simultaneously letting her into his life again, the choice felt impossible. I should go check on Juniper, she said, turning toward the door. His hand caught her wrist right over her tattoo. Elle. The touch sent electricity through her body, memories flooding back of all the times he'd grabbed her just like this, pulled her close, made her forget every reason why they shouldn't. I have to make some decisions, she whispered, not meeting his eyes. About Richard's studio. His grip loosened but didn't release. And other things. Look at me. When she didn't, his other hand came up to cup her chin. Elle, please. She raised her eyes to his, and the intensity there nearly broke her. I don't want to hurt anyone, she managed. Then don't. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away, a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Stay. It's not that simple. Why not? His voice was rough with emotion. Give me one good reason why it can't be that simple. Before she could answer, a crash came from inside the kitchen, followed by shouting. Callum cursed under his breath. Go, she said softly. Your kitchen needs you. He stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. This conversation isn't over. Is it ever? A ghost of a smile touched his lips before he turned and headed back inside. Elowen waited until the door closed behind him before pulling out her phone again. The email still glowed on her screen, full of promises and possibilities and complications. She found Juniper in the small office, drawing at Callum's desk. The little girl looked up with a bright smile that made Elowen's heart twist. I'm drawing our garden. Juniper held up the paper. See? There's you and me and— Daddy? And all the herbs are having a party. Elowen moved closer to look. In Juniper's crayon world, the three of them were holding hands among dancing basil leaves and twirling oregano, a family simple and happy. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we hang it on the fridge, next to the other ones? The other ones. a growing collection of Juniper's artwork that had slowly taken over Callum's restaurant office. Pictures of the three of them doing everyday things: cooking, reading, watching movies, a child's dream of family, drawn in crayon and hope. "Of course we can." Elowen's voice cracked slightly. "Why don't you sign it first?" As Juniper carefully wrote her name, Elowen's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from the realtor handling Richard's estate. "Need your decision about the studio by Monday. Serious buyer made an offer. The walls seemed to close in. Seattle or Asheville. Career advancement or second chances. Richard's legacy or her own happiness. How was she supposed to choose?" "Elle?" Juniper's voice was small. "Are you sad?" "No, honey." Another lie. "Just thinking." "About happy things?" Elowen looked at the drawing again, at the three figures holding hands, at the herbs dancing around them, at the sun smiling down from a crayon blue sky. "Yes," she said softly, "about very happy things." But as Juniper chatted about her upcoming playdate, Elowen's mind raced. The Seattle job would start in 2 weeks. The studio needed to be sold or saved by Monday. And somewhere in between those deadlines, she had to figure out if she was brave enough to stay, or if she was still the same woman who ran away 8 years ago. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming to Asheville in more ways than one. And this time, running away wouldn't stop it from breaking everyone's heart. The weekend crowd at the restaurant was in full swing when Elowen's phone slipped from her pocket. She'd been helping Juniper with a puzzle in Callum's office, trying to keep her mind off Monday's looming deadline, when the device clattered to the floor. The screen lit up with an incoming email. Seattle position, acceptance deadline. "What's Seattle?" Juniper asked, innocent eyes fixed on the notification. Elowen's heart stopped. "Nothing important, sweetie, just some work stuff." She quickly grabbed the phone, but the damage was done. "Is that where you're going?" Juniper's lower lip trembled. "Away like my other mommy?" The question hit like a physical blow. "John, it's not—" The office door swung open. Callum stood there, dish towel over his shoulder, face flushed from the kitchen heat. "John, honey, Ashley's mom is here for your sleepover." His eyes narrowed at their expressions. "Everything okay?" "Elle's leaving." Juniper burst out, tears spilling over. "She's going to Seattle like my other mommy left." The color drained from Callum's face. "What?" "I can explain." Elowen started, but Juniper was already running past her father, small shoulders shaking, with sobs. "Jun, wait!" Callum called after her, then turned back to Elowen, his voice deadly quiet. "Seattle? It's not what you think." "Really?" He stepped into the office, closing the door. "Because what I think is that history's repeating itself. You're running away, again." "I haven't accepted anything." The words exploded out of her. "It's just an offer." "When were you going to tell me?" "I was trying to figure things out first." "Figure what out?" His voice rose. "Whether we're worth staying for? Whether Juniper's worth staying for? That's not fair." "Fair?" He laughed, a harsh sound. "You want to talk about fair? How about telling a 5-year-old you'll be there for her, making her trust you, love you, and then—" He cut himself off, running both hands through his hair. "I haven't made any decisions yet," Elowen said quietly. "But you're considering it." It wasn't a question. "Even after seeing what you mean to her." "What you—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "What I mean to you," she finished softly. The silence between them crackled with unspoken words. Outside, they could hear the bustling restaurant life going on as their world tilted on its axis. "They want to buy Richard's studio," she finally said. "A developer. They'll tear it down, build condos." Understanding flickered in Callum's eyes. And the Seattle job would pay enough to save it. To turn it into a school, like he always wanted. Her voice cracked. "His legacy, Cal, the only thing I have left of him." And what about our legacy? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes. What about the life we could build here? I don't know how to choose. Yes, you do. His voice softened. You're just scared to. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. One of the servers poked her head in. Chef, there's an issue with Table 12's order. I'll be right there. Callum didn't take his eyes off Elowen. We're not done. Callum. No. He held up a hand. You don't get to explain right now. Right now I need to do my job and you need to fix things with my daughter. The possessive note in his voice, my daughter, cut deep. Where is she? Probably in the herb garden. It's her thinking spot. He moved to the door, then paused. Elle? Yes? When you talk to her, remember that she's already lost one mother. I won't let her lose another. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that felt like thunder. Elowen sank into his office chair, her fingers automatically finding her tattoo. Believe. But believe, in what? In the power of staying? In the courage to let go of the past? Her phone buzzed again, the realtor probably wanting an answer about the studio, or the Seattle firm expecting her to jump at their offer. Instead of checking, she slipped the phone into her pocket and headed for the back door. She found Juniper exactly where Callum said she'd be, sitting on the small bench among the herbs, clutching her stuffed animal. The sight of tear tracks on her small face made Elowen's chest ache. Can I sit with you? Juniper shrugged, a gesture so like her father it hurt. Elowen sat carefully, leaving space between them. I'm sorry you found out about Seattle like that. Are you going away forever? I don't know yet, sweetheart. That's what my other mommy said at first. Juniper's voice was small. Then she never came back. Elowen's throat tightened. I'm not her, Jun. But you might leave anyway. Nah. Little girl looked up, blue eyes swimming with tears. Even though you help me with math and know about herbs and make Daddy smile again? Each word felt like a knife to the heart. Sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices. Why? Because, Elowen struggled to explain. Because sometimes there are different kinds of right things to do, and you have to figure out which one is the most right. Like when Daddy has to choose between making pancakes or waffles. A watery laugh escaped her. Something like that. But bigger. Juniper was quiet for a moment, petting Maple's worn fur. If you go away, will you forget about us? Oh, sweetheart, no. Elowen gathered her close, breathing in her sweet scent. I could never forget you. Either of you. Then why can't you stay? Juniper's voice cracked. We could be a real family, like in my drawings. The simple truth in those words broke something in Elowen's chest. Here was this beautiful child, offering her the very thing she'd been too, afraid to reach for 8 years ago. A family, a home, a love without conditions or deadlines. But Richard's studio loomed in her mind, the last piece of her brother, the last chance to honor his memory. How could she choose between the family she'd lost and the one offering to love her now? Jun? Ashley's mom's voice called from the back door. Ready for your sleepover, sweetie? Juniper pulled away, wiping her eyes. I have to go. I know. Elowen tried to smile. Have fun with Ashley. The little girl stood, then turned back suddenly, throwing her arms around Elowen's neck. Please don't go, she whispered. Please stay and be my second mommy. I promise to be really good. Before Elowen could respond, Juniper ran inside, leaving her alone in the herb garden. The basil and oregano they'd watered together swayed in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the kitchen, she could hear Callum's voice directing his staff. Her phone buzzed again. This time she pulled it out and stared at the screen through tears. Final reminder. Seattle position requires response by Monday morning. Looking forward to welcoming you to the team. In the growing darkness, surrounded by the herbs they'd planted together years ago, Elowen faced the truth she'd been running from. Sometimes the hardest choices aren't between right and wrong. They're between two different kinds of love. And sometimes staying takes more courage than running away. Sunday morning dawned gray and cold, matching Elowen's mood as she stood in Richard's empty studio. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through the windows, and the silence felt heavy with memories. Tomorrow was the deadline, both for the Seattle job and the studio's fate. Her brother's cameras still sat on their shelves looking, almost expectant, as if waiting for him to walk through the door. She picked up his favorite one, running her fingers over the worn grip where his hands had held it thousands of times. "I don't know what to do, Rich," she whispered to the empty room. "Tell me what to do." Her phone buzzed, a text from Ashley's mom. "Juniper's running a fever." Callum's not answering his phone. Emergency prep for a big event. Elowen's heart jumped. Without thinking, she grabbed her keys and headed for her car. The drive to Ashley's house was a blur of worry and rain-slicked streets. When she arrived, Juniper was curled up on the couch, cheeks flushed with fever. "Ella?" The little girl's voice was weak. "You came." "Of course I came." Elowen pressed her lips to Juniper's forehead. "Too hot. Let's get you home, sweetheart." "I tried Callum again," Ashley's mom said quietly. "Still no answer. They're hosting some big corporate event today." "I'll handle it." Elowen gathered Juniper in her arms along with Maple in her backpack. "Thank you for calling me." The drive to Callum's house was tense, with Juniper drifting in and out of sleep in the back seat. Elowen's mind raced. She had a key. Callum had given it to her for emergencies 2 weeks ago, trying to pretend it wasn't a significant gesture. Inside, she carried Juniper to her room, the one with constellation decals on the ceiling and a wall of family drawings. The little girl stirred as Elowen tucked her in. "Will you stay?" Juniper's eyes were glassy with fever. "Until Daddy comes home?" "I'll stay as long as you need me." "Promise?" The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning beyond this moment. Elowen's throat tightened. "I promise, sweetheart, rest now." Hours passed in a blur of temperature checks, children's Tylenol and cool compresses. Elowen tried Callum's phone repeatedly, finally reaching his sous chef who promised to get him the message. Outside, the rain grew heavier, matching the storm of emotions in her chest. Around sunset, Juniper's fever spiked dangerously high. Just as Elowen was debating taking her to the emergency room, the front door burst open. "Ella?" Callum's voice was panicked. "Jun? Up here?" He took the stairs, 2 at a time, still in his chef's whites. When he saw Juniper's flushed face, his expression crumpled. "Baby, I'm so sorry I wasn't here." "Elle took care of me," Juniper mumbled. "She stayed." The words seemed to hit Callum like a physical blow. He looked at Elowen, really looked at her, taking in her disheveled appearance and the worry etched on her face. "Her fever's been climbing," Elowen said quietly. "I was about to take her to the hospital." "I'll get the car." He started to turn, but Juniper's small hand caught his. "No, I want to stay home, with both of you." Callum and Elowen's eyes met over her head. 8 years of history, of hurt and hope passed between them in that look. "I'll get more Tylenol," Elowen said softly, "and some soup if she can eat." In the kitchen, her hands shook as she heated up broth from the freezer. Callum's homemade chicken soup, labeled and dated in his precise handwriting. She heard his footsteps before she felt his presence behind her. "You stayed." His voice was rough. "She needed me." "That's not what I meant." He moved closer. "You could have called someone else, could have walked away, but you stayed." She turned to face him, and the intensity in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "Cal, the biggest event of the year, hundreds of guests. And when they told me Jun was sick, you know what my first thought was?" He stepped closer, crowding her against the counter. "Thank God Ella's with her. I'll always be there for her." Elowen whispered, "But will you be there tomorrow?" His hands gripped the counter on either side of her. "The day after? Or will Seattle take you away from us again?" Before she could answer, a cry came from upstairs. They both moved at once, parental instincts overriding everything else. In Juniper's room, they found her thrashing in her sleep, calling out for her mommy. Callum reached her first, gathering her into his arms. "Shh, sunshine, Daddy's here." "Want Elle too?" Juniper whimpered. Without hesitation, Elowen climbed onto the bed, surrounding Juniper from the other side. The little girl settled between them, her breathing gradually evening out. "She's cooler," Callum murmured, his hand brushing Elowen's as they both checked Juniper's forehead. The simple touch sent electricity through her arm. The medicine must be working. They sat in silence, watching Juniper sleep, their bodies forming a protective circle around her. Outside, the rain continued to fall, creating a gentle percussion against the windows. "I can't lose you again." Callum's voice was barely audible. "Either of us. It would break something in me that I couldn't fix." Elowen looked at Juniper's peaceful face, then at the wall of drawings, a child's vision of the family she wanted. Her eyes fell on the newest addition, a picture of 3 figures in the herb garden, surrounded by hearts and stars. "The studio," she started. "We'll figure it out." He caught her gaze. "Together, if you'll let us." "How?" "I've been doing some calculations. The restaurant's doing well, and I've been saving for an expansion." He paused. Maybe that expansion could be a photography school instead of a second location. Her heart stuttered. "Callum, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering." His free hand found hers across Juniper's sleeping form. "Let me help you honor Richard's memory. Let me prove that you don't have to choose between the past and the future." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "When did you become so wise?" "Probably around the time I had to explain to a 3-year-old why people leave." His thumb brushed away her tears. "Ella, I'm not asking you to forget Richard. I'm asking you to let us help you remember him." Juniper stirred between them, snuggling closer to Elowen. "Don't go," she mumbled in her sleep. The simple plea broke something open in Elowen's chest. Here, in this room filled with crayon dreams and childhood fever, she finally understood what Richard had tried to tell her before he died. "Sometimes, Elbel, the best way to honor those we've lost is to love those who are still here." She looked at Callum, really looked at him, at the silver in his temples, the laugh lines around his eyes, the way he held their daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? I'm staying." The words felt like coming home. "If you'll have me, I'm staying." His kiss, when it came, tasted of tears and promise, and 8 years of waiting. Between them, Juniper sighed in her sleep, as if sensing that her crayon dreams were finally coming true. Outside, the rain began to ease, and through a break in the clouds, stars appeared, bright points of light guiding lost souls home. "A little to the left," Elowen called out, watching Callum adjust the vintage camera display on the studio wall. "No, your other left." "There is no other left," he grumbled, but his eyes sparkled with amusement. "You're worse than Jun with her room decorating." 2 weeks had passed since the night of Juniper's fever, since Elowen had chosen to stay. The Seattle firm hadn't taken her rejection well, but their disappointment felt distant compared to the joy of watching Richard's studio transform. With Callum's help and investment, the space was becoming what her brother had always dreamed of, a school where passion for photography could be passed on. "Perfect," she declared as Callum finally positioned the camera. Richard would have loved this. "Yeah?" He stepped back to admire their work. "Tell me about him, about growing up here." Elowen smiled, remembering. "He used to chase me around with his first camera, this horrible plastic thing that took terrible pictures, but he didn't care. He'd say, 'Elle, Daddy,'" Juniper burst through the studio door, her backpack bouncing. "Look what I made in art class." She thrust a paper into their hands, a carefully drawn floor plan of what appeared to be a house. Little labels marked different rooms. Daddy's cooking space, Ella's photo room, my new bedroom with stars. "It's our new house," she explained, earnestly, "for when we all live together." The silence that followed was deafening. Elowen and Callum exchanged startled looks. They hadn't discussed living arrangements yet, both careful not to push too fast after 8 years apart. "Sunshine," Callum began gently. "Elle and I haven't—" "But you love each other," Juniper interrupted, her lower lip trembling. "And Elle stays over lots now when I'm sick or scared. And she makes breakfast with us on Sundays. So why can't we be a real family in one house?" Elowen knelt to Juniper's level, heart aching at the hope in those blue eyes. "We are a real family, sweetheart. Living together or apart doesn't change that." "But—" Juniper clutched her drawing tighter. "Ashley's family all lives together, and they have a dog. Can we have a dog too?" Callum made a choked sound that might have been laughter. "One life-changing decision at a time, Jun. I just want—" The little girl's voice wavered. "I want it to be forever this time. Promise it's forever?" The weight of that question settled over the room. Elowen looked up at Callum, saw her own emotions reflected in his eyes. "How did you promise forever when life had taught you how fragile promises could be? Come here." Callum scooped Juniper up, settling her on a nearby workbench. "Remember what we talked about how love works? That it's not about living in the same house," Juniper recited dutifully. "It's about choosing each other every day." "That's right." He brushed her hair back. "And Elle chose us, remember? She stayed when you were sick. She's helping make Uncle Richard's studio beautiful again. But what if she wants her own house more than she wants us?" "Oh, sweetheart." Elowen moved closer, her heart breaking. "That's not how love works. Having my own space doesn't mean I love you any less." "Then why can't your space be with us?" The simple logic of a child cutting through adult complications. Elowen met Callum's gaze over Juniper's head, saw the question there that he was too careful to ask. "Actually," she found herself saying, "maybe we could talk about that, all of us, together." Callum's eyes widened. "Elle, you don't have to—" "I want to." The certainty in her voice surprised her. "Not because John asked, but because when I'm not with you both, my apartment doesn't feel like home anymore." Juniper's face lit up. "Really? Really?" Elowen took a deep breath. "But we'd need to do it right. Take our time. Figure out how to blend our lives without losing ourselves." "Like when Daddy makes soup?" Juniper asked. "He says all the ingredients need their own space to make the flavor perfect." A laugh escaped Callum. "That's actually a pretty good analogy, Sunshine." "So," Juniper looked between them hopefully, "can we look at houses? One with a big kitchen for Daddy and a photo room for Elle and maybe a space for a dog?" "Tell you what," Callum said, his voice soft. "Why don't we start with dinner? Elle can come over tonight and we can talk about what everyone wants and needs. Deal?" "Deal." Juniper hopped down. "Can we have breakfast for dinner? With maple syrup?" "Only if Elle helps make it," Callum said, his eyes meeting Elowen's with such tenderness it made her breath catch. As Juniper skipped around the studio, chattering about pancake toppings, Elowen felt Callum's hand slip into hers. "You sure about this?" he murmured. "We can take it slower." She squeezed his hand, watching Juniper examine the vintage cameras with careful fingers. 8 years ago, I ran because I thought I had to choose between love and family obligation. I'm done choosing. I want it all. The messy, complicated, beautiful whole of it. Even the part where our 5-year-old is apparently a real estate expert. Especially that part. She turned to face him. "But you know what this means, right? If we do this, if we build this life together, no more running," he finished, "from either of us." "No more running," she agreed. "Even when it gets hard, even when we're scared." He pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm not scared. Not anymore." "No?" "Nope." His smile was soft. "Turns out sometimes the best ingredients find their way back to each other, even if it takes 8 years and one very persistent little girl." From across the studio, Juniper called out, "Can my new room have a window seat?" "For reading and watching stars?" Elowen laughed against Callum's chest. "We haven't even started looking at houses yet." "I know." His arms tightened around her. "But somehow I think she's got the right idea. About all of it." Looking around the studio, at Richard's cameras finding new purpose, at Juniper's joy, at Callum's steady presence beside her, Elowen finally understood what her brother's last words had meant. "Life's not about the pictures we take, Elbel. It's about the home we make in between shots." Here, in this space between past and future, she was finally ready to make that home. One pancake dinner, one real estate listing, one family moment, at a time. And maybe, just maybe, with a dog. "Found another box," Callum announced, stepping into Richard's studio with a dusty cardboard container. This one was hidden in the back closet. Elowen looked up from the class schedule she was drafting for the photography school's opening. 3 months had passed since she'd decided to stay, and each day seemed to bring new discoveries, both in the studio and in their evolving relationship. "What's in it?" she asked, watching him set it down carefully. "Old notebooks, looks like. Class plans, student notes." He paused, pulling out a leather-bound journal. "And this." Her breath caught. "Rich's idea book. I thought we'd lost it in the move." Callum handed it to her gently, understanding the weight of the moment. As she opened the worn cover, a loose photograph slipped out. Her and Richard as teenagers, him teaching her how to hold her first camera. "He knew, you know," she said softly, "about the tumor, long before he told me. I found medical papers when I was packing up his house. He kept it secret for months, didn't want to worry me." "Sounds like someone else I know." Callum's voice was gentle, trying to carry everything alone. She met his eyes, seeing the reference to her own past choices. "I'm learning to share the load now." "Good." He settled beside her, his presence warm and solid. "Because I have something to tell you, and I need you to remember that we're in this together." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" Juniper's birth mother called. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What does she want?" "To meet Jun." Callum ran a hand through his hair, his tell when he was stressed. "She's in town for a week. Says she's been thinking about her choices, about making amends." "After 5 years?" Elowen's protective instincts flared. "She doesn't get to just walk back in and..." His hand found hers. "Breathe." She realized she was gripping Richard's journal too tightly, forced herself to relax. "Sorry, the thought of her hurting Juniper." "I know." He squeezed her fingers. "Trust me, every protective instinct in me is screaming. But June deserves to know her birth mother, even if it's just to understand why she left." "Have you told her yet?" "No. I wanted to talk to you first." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You're part of this family now. These decisions, they affect all of us." The simple statement, "You're part of this family," made her throat tight. "What do you need from me?" "Just you. Your strength, your love for June." He looked down at their joined hands. "And maybe your perspective on mothers who leave." Understanding dawned. "Because I left once too." "Different circumstances," he said quickly. "You left to save your brother. She left because she didn't want to be a mother. But the effect on you was the same." Elowen touched his cheek, making him meet her eyes. "You stopped trusting, started building walls. Until a certain 5-year-old demolished them with crayon drawings and pancake requests." They shared a smile, both thinking of Juniper's latest masterpiece, a family portrait featuring them, a newly adopted golden retriever puppy named Cookie, and a house with a red door they'd close on in 2 weeks. "You know what the difference is?" Elowen said softly. "Between her mother's leaving and mine?" "Tell me." "I came back. Not just to Asheville, but to myself, to who I really am and what I really want." She gestured around the studio, at the class, schedules and camera displays. This place, it's not just Richard's legacy anymore. It's ours. All of ours. Callum was quiet for a moment, processing. Jun asks about her sometimes. Her birth mother. Not often, but she wonders. Of course she does, it's part of her story. What if... He hesitated. What if meeting her makes Jun want more? What if she wants her birth mother in her life permanently? Then we'll handle it, together. Elowen squeezed his hand. A child can never have too many people loving her, Cal, even if some of that love comes with complicated history. He pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time a little girl taught me that family isn't about who leaves, it's about who chooses to stay. The studio door burst open and Juniper bounded in with Cookie bouncing at her heels. Elle, Daddy, look what I made in school. She thrust a paper into their hands, another family drawing, but this one was different. Among the usual figures of their family, there was a new addition. A woman with question marks around her. My teacher says it's okay to wonder about... Hi first, Mommy, Juniper explained. That it doesn't mean I love you less, Ella. Elowen's heart squeezed. She's right, sweetheart. And you know what else? It's okay to have questions, to want to know her. Really? Juniper's eyes darted between them. Even though she left? Really? Callum said, pulling her into their embrace. Actually, Sunshine, we need to talk about something. Your birth mother is in town and she'd like to meet you. Juniper stilled. Will Elle still be my mommy too? Oh, baby. Elowen gathered her close. Always. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. Promise? With all my heart. She met Callum's eyes over Juniper's head. We're building something special here, all of us together. Nothing can change that. Cookie whined, pawing at their legs until they laughed and made room for him in their group hug. Outside, spring. Sunlight filtered through the studio windows, casting prisms from the vintage cameras onto the walls. Later, after Juniper had gone to bed, Elowen found Callum in their half-packed kitchen, staring at the family photos on the fridge. Penny for your thoughts? She asked, sliding her arms around him from behind. Just thinking about spaces, he said. The ones between people, between choices. How sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is giving them room to figure things out. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. Like giving Juniper space to know her birth mother. Like giving you space to come back to us. Turning in her arms, he cupped her face. You know what I realized today? Watching you with Jun, seeing how you handled the news about her mother. What? That sometimes the best love stories aren't about the leaving or the coming back. They're about the staying, the daily choice to build something beautiful out of all our broken pieces. As if to prove his point, Cookie trotted in with one of Juniper's drawings in his mouth. Their new house, their new life, drawn in crayon and hope and possibility. Their future, waiting to be developed like one of Richard's photographs. One choice, one day, one love at a time. 1 year. Elowen stood in the kitchen of their red door house, watching early morning sunlight paint patterns on the walls. Hard to believe 12 months had passed since she'd chosen to stay, since a wrong number had led her back to the right life. The scent of coffee and maple syrup filled the air. Sunday morning pancakes, a tradition that had survived their move, their wedding, and all the changes in between. From upstairs came the sound of Juniper's laughter, followed by Callum's deeper chuckle and Cookie's excited barking. Her fingers traced the new tattoo on her wrist, just below the believe, the date they'd become a legal family, the day she'd officially adopted Juniper. Not that a piece of paper had made them more of a family than they already were, but it had meant everything to their daughter to have it in writing, permanent and real. Ella! Juniper's voice carried down the stairs. Can you come up? We have a surprise. Coming, sweetheart. She poured a third cup of coffee, this one with extra cream and sugar, and headed upstairs. The guest room door was closed, soft voices murmuring behind it. This was new. Usually their Sunday mornings were just the 3, 4 counting cookie of them. But today was special. Today marked not just their family's anniversary, but also the first graduating class from Richard's photography school. The door opened to reveal Juniper, practically vibrating with excitement, and behind her, "Good morning," Natalie said softly, accepting the coffee Elowen offered. "Hope it's okay that we came early." Juniper's birth mother looked better than she had a year ago when they'd first met. Regular therapy, a steady job, and monthly visits with Juniper had helped heal old wounds on all sides. It hadn't been easy. Nothing worth having ever was. But they'd found a way to make it work. "Of course it's okay." Elowen meant it. "You're part of this too." Callum appeared in the doorway, flower on his shirt, and love in his eyes. "Ready? For the big reveal?" Reveal. Juniper could barely contain herself. "We made something, all of us together." The guest room had been transformed. Photos covered every wall. Professional shots from Richard's old cameras mixed with Juniper's. Beginner attempts, family portraits next to candid moments. Their whole story, captured in light and shadow. "Jun had the idea," Callum explained, sliding an arm around Elowen's waist. "For the school's first exhibition. She calls it The Pictures Between." Elowen moved closer to the walls, taking in each image. There was the first photo of her and Juniper in the herb garden, Callum teaching their daughter how to flip pancakes, Cookie's adoption day, the moment Natalie gave Juniper her first camera, both of them teary-eyed and smiling. "Look," Juniper pointed to a central frame. "This is my favorite." It was a group shot from their wedding day, not the formal portrait, but a candid moment. Afterward, Elowen in her simple white dress, Callum in his suit, Juniper between them in her flower girl dress. But there was Natalie too, and Cookie, and even a photo of Richard propped in a place of honor. All the pieces of their complicated, beautiful family. And this one, Juniper bounced to another photo. From when we got the keys to the house. The red door featured prominently, all of them squeezed into the frame, Cookie's tail a happy blur. Elowen remembered that day, how Callum had insisted on carrying her over the threshold even though they weren't married yet. How Juniper had run from room to room naming each space, how they'd picnicked on the floor because they had no furniture. "There's space for more," Natalie said quietly. "That's what I love about it. There's always room for new moments, new memories." "Like the school's opening?" Juniper asked. "Can we add pictures from today?" "Of course." Elowen hugged her daughter, close. "Today's a big day for all of us." It was true. The photography school was opening its doors, fulfilling Richard's dream in ways he might never have imagined. Students would learn not just technique, but heart. How to capture the moments. Between moments, the love between frames. "We should head over soon." Callum checked his watch. "The ceremony starts at 11. "Wait!" Juniper ran to her room, returning with something clutched in her hands. "One more surprise." She handed Elowen a familiar-looking box, the same one that had held Callum's engagement ring for 8 years. But inside wasn't a ring. Instead, there was a small key on a handmade keychain. "For the studio," Juniper explained. "I made the keychain in art class. See? It has all our initials." Elowen traced the carefully carved letters, C-E-J-N, their whole family, connected in wood and love. "Perfect timing," Callum said softly. "Since we're announcing the scholarship program today." Natalie's eyes widened. "You mean the Richard Price Memorial Scholarship," Elowen confirmed, "for students who need a little help making their dreams come true?" Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. "You're amazing parents, all of you, in different ways. Jun is so lucky." "We're the lucky ones," Callum said, watching their daughter arrange Cookie's bow tie for the ceremony. "Right, sunshine?" "Right," Juniper beamed. "Because we chose each other, even when it was hard." The wisdom in her words struck them all silent for a moment. Then Callum cleared his throat. "Speaking of choices, who's ready for celebration pancakes?" They migrated downstairs, this unconventional family they'd built. In the kitchen, Elowen watched them move around each other with practiced ease. Callum at the stove, Juniper setting the table, Natalie arranging fruit, Cookie hoping for dropped morsels. This was what Richard had meant in his final days, she realized. When he'd talked about legacy, about the images that really mattered. It wasn't just about the photos on the wall or the school bearing his name. It was about the pictures they created every day with their choices. The portrait of love they painted with pancake sundaes and goodnight kisses, with hard conversations and healing hearts, with room for growth and forgiveness and new beginnings. Ella? Juniper tugged her hand. Will you take our picture? All of us before we go to the school? Of course, sweetheart. She grabbed her camera, Richard's old one, restored and beloved. Everyone ready? They gathered by the kitchen window, morning light perfect for portraits. But just before she pressed the shutter, Juniper spoke again. Wait, can we do it by the red door instead? That's where our story really started. So they moved outside, arranging themselves before the door that had become their symbol of home. As Elowen set up the timer and joined them, she felt Callum's arm strong around her waist, Juniper's small hand in hers, Natalie's grateful presence, Cookie's warm fur against her legs. Say, family, Juniper called out. The shutter clicked, capturing the moment forever, not just their faces but the love between them. The choices that had brought them here, the future they were building together. Later, this photo would join the others on the wall. People would see it at the school's exhibition and smile at the happy family by the red door. But only they would know the full story, the wrong number that led to right love, the past hurts healed by present joy, the courage it took to stay when leaving seemed easier. And in years to come, when Juniper was older and their family had grown in new ways, they would look at this photo and remember this truth, that the best pictures aren't the ones we pose for, but the ones we live into. One pancake sundae at a time. One family choice at a time. One love, multiplied by every heart that chooses to stay. 5 years later, the autumn breeze carried the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg through the open windows of the Red Door house. Inside, 10-year-old Juniper carefully arranged photographs on a display board, her tongue poking out in concentration. How's the project coming, Sunshine? Callum asked, passing through with a tray of fresh-baked cookies. Almost done. She adjusted one last picture. It's for career day at school. I'm showing everyone what our family does. The display was pure Juniper, meticulous and full of heart. Photos of Callum's restaurant now expanded to include a cozy cafe attached to the photography school. Shots of Elowen teaching her advanced classes, her growing belly visible beneath her flowing dress. Their second child due in spring. Pictures of Natalie's new counseling practice, where she helped other women heal from past choices. And in the center, the image that had started it all. Their first family photo by the Red Door, now slightly faded but still perfect. Hey, you two. Elowen waddled in, camera in hand. The students' final exhibition is about to start. Jun, did you get your speech ready? Juniper nodded proudly. As the youngest teaching assistant at Richard's photography school, she would be introducing the graduation ceremony. Her own photos had already won several junior competitions, carrying on her Uncle Richard's legacy in ways that made Elowen's heart swell. Cookie, gray-muzzled but still spirited, trotted in with his therapy dog vest on, ready for his weekly rounds at Natalie's clinic. He nuzzled Elowen's belly as if checking on his newest family member. One quick picture before we go? Juniper asked, already knowing the answer. They gathered by the front door, their tradition now marking every milestone here. But this time, as Elowen set up the timer, she noticed something new in Juniper's display board. A small note written in her daughter's careful handwriting. Family isn't what you're born into. It's what you choose every day. And sometimes the wrong number leads to the right love. The camera clicked, capturing their laughter, their joy, their future still unfolding. One picture, one choice, one love at a time. The end. After following the emotional journey of Callum, Elowen, and Juniper, one question remains in our hearts. If you had to choose between honoring the memory of someone you've lost or embracing a new love that promises to heal your heart, what would your decision be? Like Elowen, would you follow your heart even if you were afraid of getting hurt again? Or would you let the past dictate your future? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.